The throne hall of the Galactic Empire was not a place for weak hearts. The ceiling was higher than mountains, carved from black crystal that seemed to swallow all light. 100 banners of alien warlords hung on the walls, each one taken after bloody conquest. Soldiers stood like statues, their armor glowing faint red, their weapons sharp enough to cut through steel. At the center of this fearsome hall sat the Emperor, ruler of 50 star systems, a being so feared that even his enemies whispered his name in silence. His eyes burned like twin suns, and his crown of silver spikes made him look more like a god than a king. But the most dangerous secret of this court was not the Emperor himself. It was his daughters, 2 of them, one with eyes as cold as ice, the other with eyes as bright as fire. Their beauty was unmatched, but no alien dared to look too long. Every courtier knew the rule. No gaze upon the daughters, no word spoken, no hand raised. Those who tried had vanished without a trace. Some said they were burned alive. Others believed their souls were fed to alien beasts. No one truly knew, but all knew the punishment was death. So the daughters sat silent on jeweled thrones beside their father, like untouchable treasures locked in glass, until the day the human came. The guards first laughed when he arrived. A human? In the Emperor's hall? Humans were considered weak among the alien races, too fragile to survive the wars of the galaxy. Yet this one walked with steady steps, his boots echoing on the crystal floor. He was scarred, his face marked by battles that most aliens could not imagine. His armor was simple, not shining with alien technology, but heavy, worn, and solid. On his back hung a sword, not plasma, not energy, but steel. Old, ancient, almost forgotten in the age of stars. The courtiers whispered and sneered. Fool. Mad creature. He will not live past this hour. The Emperor leaned forward, curious but cruel. A human. My hall is not for your kind. Why do you stand before me? The human bowed slightly, but not in fear. His voice was calm, low, but every word cut through the silence. I stand here, he said, because no alien dared, and I have come to claim what all fear. The hall froze. Every soldier stiffened, every courtier gasped. The words were madness. No one had ever spoken like this before the Emperor. No one had ever dared to hint at the forbidden truth. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. His voice thundered like a storm. You dare speak so? You know the cost of your words? Still, the human's gaze was steady. He did not tremble, did not bow deeper. His eyes, sharp and unafraid, turned toward the 2 daughters. For the first time in years, someone truly looked at them. The icy-eyed daughter's lips parted, her breath caught. The fiery-eyed daughter leaned forward slightly, as if curious. The hall erupted in shouts. Kill him now! Strike him down. His eyes. His eyes are on them. Guards stepped forward, weapons raised. But the Emperor lifted a single clawed hand, stopping them. His voice was soft now, but far more deadly. Human, you speak of claiming what none dare touch. Do you know what this means? The human nodded once. I know. The Emperor's smile was cruel. Then you choose death. The daughters exchanged a glance, silent but sharp. Something passed between them, a spark unseen by others. The human did not move. He only placed one hand on the hilt of his sword. If death is the price, I will pay it. But I will not crawl. And I will not fear. The silence that followed was heavy, crushing. Even the banners on the walls seemed to hold their breath. Then the Emperor rose from his throne. His crown caught the light, his shadow falling over the entire hall. Very well, he said. You want what no alien dared? Then you shall prove your worth. If you survive, you may speak again. If you fall, your bones will join the dust of 1,000 fools. He raised his hand. The massive gates at the far end of the hall groaned open. Darkness spilled out, followed by a roar so deep it shook the crystal floor. From the shadows, 2 burning eyes glared, and a monstrous shape began to crawl forward. The courtiers fell back in terror. The daughter's eyes widened, but the human only gripped his sword tighter, his face calm, his steps unshaken. The beast roared again, louder, shaking the pillars. The human raised his head and whispered almost to himself, but clear enough for all to hear, "Let it come." And the throne hall, for the first time in centuries, trembled with something new, not fear, but hope. The beast's corpse still smoked on the crystal floor. Its black blood spread like a river, filling the air with a burning smell. No one in the throne hall spoke. No one even breathed too loudly. The human stood there, his steel sword dripping, his chest rising and falling. He was wounded, yes, but he stood. He had survived what no alien ever had. The Emperor's burning eyes narrowed. For the first time in centuries, a challenger had not died at the first test. His long claws curled around the armrest of his throne, scratching deep lines into the black stone. The courtiers whispered in disbelief. He killed it. A human. Impossible. Perhaps the beast was weak, but they knew the truth. The beast had torn apart champions of 10 worlds. No one had ever lasted more than a minute, and yet the human had ended it. The Emperor rose slowly, his tall frame casting a shadow that reached the far walls. His voice carried like thunder, shaking the banners. "Human," he said, "you walk in my hall with a steel toy. You speak of claiming what no alien dared. You killed one beast, yes, but this is not enough." The human wiped the blood from his blade. His voice was calm, almost quiet, but the whole hall heard him. "Then test me again." A silence fell. The courtiers shifted nervously. Some of them wanted to see him destroyed. Some, for the first time, wanted to see him win. The Emperor's cruel smile returned. "So eager to die? Then listen well. To speak again in my presence, you must face not the beast of fang and claw, but me." Gasps filled the chamber. To challenge the Emperor himself was madness. No one in the galaxy would dare. But the Emperor was not finished. His smile widened, sharp as a blade. "Not in battle, human, no. I will give you a choice." He raised his hand and the daughters stepped forward. The icy-eyed princess moved like moonlight, calm and untouchable. The fiery-eyed princess burned like a living flame, her steps bold. The hall glowed as they walked, and every courtier lowered their gaze, afraid to even see them too clearly. The Emperor pointed at them. "Choose, tell me, human. Which of my daughters would you claim?" The air turned to stone. The courtiers stared in horror. This was not a gift, it was a trap. To choose one meant insult to the other. To not choose meant insult to both. Either path led to death. The daughters stood side by side. Their eyes, sharp and knowing, studied the human carefully. One face unreadable, the other flickering with secret fire. The human looked at them. Not with hunger, not with greed, but with respect. His gaze did not crawl, it did not steal. He looked at them as equals, and that alone shocked the court. Then he spoke. Slowly, clearly, each word striking like a drumbeat. "I will not choose." The courtiers gasped, as if lightning had struck the hall. Guards moved, weapons raised, but the Emperor lifted a hand to silence them. His eyes burned hotter. "You dare defy me?" The human stood taller, his voice steady. "I see 2 lives, 2 souls, not prizes, not treasures. I will not insult them with choice." The daughters exchanged a glance. For the first time, faint smiles touched their lips. The Emperor's smile died. His claws dug deeper into the throne. "You insult me with your defiance, human." No one rejects the Emperor's command. The hall trembled with his rage, but the human did not flinch. "If survival means betrayal of honor," the human said, "then death is nothing to fear." The courtiers fell into silence again. Some stared in awe, some in terror. Never in their lives had they heard words like these in the Emperor's hall. The fiery-eyed princess leaned forward, her voice soft but sharp. "Father, he speaks not like the others. Let him—" "Silence!" The Emperor's roar shook the walls. Even his daughters obeyed. He turned back to the human, his eyes glowing like molten suns. "You claim honor? You claim defiance? Then you shall face the impossible." He raised both arms, and the hall filled with a low rising sound. The crystal floor split, opening into a vast pit. Flames shot upward, smoke curling to the ceiling. Chains rattled deep within. The courtiers stumbled back, covering their mouths, their faces pale. From the pit came a rumble, deep and endless, like the growl of a planet itself. A shape began to rise, larger than any beast, larger than any machine. The Emperor's voice rolled like thunder. "In my arena of fire you will fight until your bones turn to ash. If you win, if such madness is possible, then only then may you speak again, and only then may you dare claim." The human stood on the edge of the pit, flames lighting his face. He lifted his sword once more, steel shining against the fire. He said only 2 words, "Then begin." The hall erupted with roars, shouts, and cries. Some cheered for his death, others whispered of hope. The daughters stared at him, their eyes alight with something new, something dangerous. And the Emperor smiled, his teeth sharp as knives. "Let the war of the arena begin." The gates of the Emperor's arena opened with a scream of steel. The human was pushed inside, his sword in hand, the firelight painting his face in shadows. The arena was a pit of death. Flames licked the walls, smoke swirled above, and the ground was black stone cracked with heat. Thousands of aliens filled the stands, their voices a storm of sound. Some shouted for blood, others for glory. All wanted a show. High above, on a throne of black iron, the Emperor watched. His daughters sat beside him, their faces calm, but their eyes never leaving the lone figure in the arena. The Emperor raised his clawed hand. The crowd went silent. His voice rolled across the fire pit like thunder. Let the trial begin. If the human survives, he may live another day. If he fails, his bones will feed the flames. The gates at the far end of the arena opened. Chains rattled. The ground shook. From the darkness came the first beast. It was massive, taller than 3 men, with skin like molten rock and eyes of fire. Its arms ended in jagged claws, each as long as a spear. With a roar it charged, the ground trembling beneath its weight. The crowd screamed with joy. They expected a quick death. The human stood still. His eyes followed the beast, calm, unblinking. At the last moment he moved. Not forward, not backward, but sideways. The beast's claws slammed into the ground where he had stood, stone shattering. The human's steel blade flashed once. A deep cut marked the beast's side. Black fire sprayed from the wound. The beast roared in pain and turned again. But the human was gone, already moving, already striking. His steps were small, quick, precise. Not brute force, skill, not power, only strategy. The courtiers watching from above began to murmur. He dodges, like water. He reads its moves before they come. Impossible, for a human. The daughters leaned forward, their eyes sharp, their lips parted in silent awe. The beast swung wildly, but each attack only brought more cuts, more blood, more pain. Finally, with a scream that shook the arena, it collapsed, its body crashing into the black stone. The crowd gasped. Silence fell. Then slowly whispers rose again. He killed it. He killed the fire beast. A human did this? The Emperor's eyes narrowed. His claws tapped the armrest of his throne. He spoke, his voice cold. Bring the second. The gates opened again. This time 2 shapes entered. Sleek, fast, 4-legged monsters with jaws filled with steel fangs. Their bodies glowed with energy, their claws sparking against the stone. They moved like lightning, circling the human, waiting for weakness. The crowd roared again. Tear him apart! Tear him apart! The human's grip tightened on his sword. His breathing slowed. He turned in a circle, watching, waiting. One beast leaped. His blade rose, cutting its throat in midair. Black sparks exploded, the body crashing into the stone. The second beast struck from behind. Too fast, too close. The courtiers gasped. The daughters cried out, but the human rolled forward, his sword spinning. The beast's claws grazed his back, tearing his armor, but his blade struck true. The second beast fell in a spray of dark blood. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some screamed in anger, but none could deny what they had seen. The Emperor's smile faded. His eyes glowed brighter. He lifted his hand again. Enough beasts. Bring the champion. The arena gates opened once more. This time the figure that stepped out was not a monster. It was a warrior. An alien champion, taller than the human, covered in golden armor. His weapon was a massive axe glowing with plasma. He raised it high and the crowd roared in respect. The human faced him without fear. His sword was chipped, his armor torn, his body bleeding, but his eyes were steady. The champion charged, axe swinging with deadly force. The human blocked once, twice, sparks flying. The third blow nearly broke his blade, forcing him back. The crowd cheered for the champion. But then the human smiled faintly. He had seen it, a weakness. The champion's swings were strong but slow. Each strike was predictable. Each movement left an opening. The human ducked under the next blow, his sword flashing. A crack opened in the champion's armor. The alien roared, swinging again. Another dodge, another cut. Step by step, strike by strike, the human carved through the golden armor. Finally, with one last thrust, he drove his blade into the champion's chest. The arena fell silent. The champion dropped his axe, falling to his knees. Then he collapsed, motionless, onto the black stone. The human stood over him, breathing hard, his sword dripping. The silence lasted only a moment. Then the crowd erupted louder than ever before. Not just with anger, but with something else. Something dangerous. Admiration. The daughters rose from their seats, their eyes burning with light. The fiery-eyed princess whispered, "He fights like no other." The Emperor's claws dug deep into his throne. His voice rumbled with fury. "This is not the end. Tomorrow, he faces me." The human lifted his sword, pointing it at the Emperor's throne. His voice carried across the arena, calm and sharp. "Then tomorrow, Emperor, we finish this." The arena still echoed with the roar of the crowd. The human stood in the center, his sword broken at the tip, his armor cracked, his body bleeding. Yet he stood tall, unbroken, his eyes locked on the Emperor's throne above. The champion lay dead behind him. The beasts were silent, their corpses burned to ash. No one had believed this was possible, but the human had turned the impossible into truth. The Emperor rose slowly from his iron throne. His towering frame loomed over all, his crown burning with light. His claws curled around the railing as his voice shook the arena. "Enough of these games. You have killed my beasts. You have slain my champion. But strength alone cannot win you honor in my empire. There is another trial, one that no alien has ever passed." The crowd leaned forward. Eager, hungry for more, the Emperor turned, his hand sweeping toward his daughters. The icy-eyed princess rose first, her step slow and graceful. She was a vision of calm, her face unreadable, her gaze like frozen stars. Then the fiery-eyed princess followed, bold and proud, her every step sparking whispers through the crowd. Her eyes burned with something fierce, not just defiance but curiosity. The two princesses walked down to the edge of the arena, their jeweled robes flowing like rivers of light. The crowd went silent. No one dared to speak while the daughters stood in view. The Emperor's voice rang out cruel and sharp. "Human, you claim what no alien dared. Then choose, which of my daughters will you take? Speak their name before all and let the galaxy see your folly." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. The human's bloodied hands tightened on his sword. His chest rose and fell with slow breaths. Every eye was on him. Thousands of aliens waited to see him stumble, to see him destroyed not by blade or beast but by choice. For this was the Emperor's true trap. To choose one meant insulting the other. To refuse meant insulting both. Any path led to death. The daughters stood still, their eyes locked on the human. The icy-eyed princess's lips trembled just slightly as if waiting. The fiery-eyed princess's chest rose quickly, her eyes burning brighter than before. The courtiers whispered, "He must choose. He cannot escape. His life ends with his words." The Emperor smiled cruelly, his teeth gleaming. The human looked at the daughters. He did not stare as others had with hunger or fear. He looked at them with calm respect. He spoke, his voice steady, carrying across the arena. "I will not choose." The crowd gasped as one. The sound shook the air. Guards stepped forward, weapons ready. Courtiers screamed for his death. The Emperor's eyes flared with fire. "You dare defy me? You refuse my command?" The human stood taller, his voice cutting through the noise. "I see 2 lives, 2 souls. Not prizes to claim, not jewels to own. They are more than your throne allows them to be. I will not insult them with choice." The daughter's eyes widened. For the first time in memory, both sisters smiled, faint, secret, but real. The arena trembled with whispers. "He refused. He spoke to them as equals. Never has this been done." The Emperor's claws dug into the railing, sparks flying. His voice rose in fury. "You insult my throne. You insult my blood. Do you think yourself above the laws of the Empire?" The human did not flinch. He lifted his broken sword, pointing it at the Emperor. His voice was quiet but sharp as steel. "I stand where no one else dared, not above your law, but beyond your fear." The crowd erupted again, voices splitting between outrage and awe. Some demanded his death, others whispered of hope. The fiery-eyed princess stepped forward, her voice carrying like flame. "Father, he has shown courage no alien has. He has faced your beasts, your champion, and your will. Why not?" "Silence!" The Emperor's roar shook the arena, silencing her instantly. His burning eyes turned back to the human. "You reject my command? Then you shall face the impossible. Not beasts, not champions, not choice. Tomorrow, human, you face me." The crowd gasped again. The Emperor himself? No one had ever fought him. His power was feared across galaxies. The human's face did not change. He raised his sword higher, even broken as it was. "Then tomorrow," he said, "I end this." The crowd roared with madness, fear, and excitement. The daughters stood side by side, their smiles gone, their eyes burning with new light. They had seen something no one else dared see. A man who did not bow, did not break, did not treat them as treasures in a cage. For the first time, they wondered if their chains could be broken. High above, the Emperor turned, his voice cold as death. Prepare the duel. Tomorrow the human dies. The arena shook with cheers and screams. The human lowered his sword, his eyes steady, his body still strong despite his wounds. The trap had been laid. The choice had been refused. And now only one trial remained. The day of judgment came. The grand arena of the Empire burned with light and fire. Towers of black stone circled the pit, and banners of conquered worlds hung like trophies. 100,000 aliens filled the stands, their roars shaking the skies. This was no ordinary trial. This was a spectacle. The Emperor himself had called it so. The entire galaxy would hear of it. A single human, scarred and wounded, would face the wrath of the greatest ruler in the stars. At the center of the arena, the human stood. His armor was patched, his sword broken at the tip, yet his stance was steady. He looked around at the endless crowd but did not bow. His eyes were fixed only on the throne high above. The Emperor appeared at last, descending into the arena with a thunderous step. His frame was massive, his crown burning with power. His armor gleamed like liquid fire, his claws longer than daggers.
He did not carry a weapon. He did not need one.
His very body was a weapon, sharpened over centuries of conquest. The daughters were forced to sit on a raised platform above the pit. The icy-eyed princess sat silent, her face calm, but her hands gripping the railing tightly. The fiery-eyed princess leaned forward, her eyes burning with fear and fury, whispering under her breath, "He cannot, he must not fall." The Emperor's voice rolled across the arena, shaking the stone. "This is the last day for the human. He has refused my command, insulted my throne, and defied my law. Today before all he shall break. Let this be a lesson to every world. No one stands against the Emperor." The crowd roared in approval. The Emperor turned to the human. His burning eyes narrowed. "Do you kneel before death, human?" The human raised his broken sword. His voice was calm, carrying across the pit. "I kneel before no tyrant." The words struck the crowd like lightning. Some screamed for his death. Others whispered in awe. The daughters' eyes widened, their hearts pounding. The Emperor smiled cruelly. "Then you will die on your feet." He moved. The ground cracked beneath his steps as he charged. His speed was monstrous, his claws flashing like blades. The human barely raised his sword in time. The clash rang like thunder, the shock wave throwing dust and fire into the air. The human staggered back, his arms shaking from the force. The Emperor laughed, a deep and terrible sound. "You are nothing but a fragile shadow, and shadows die in the light." The next blow came faster. The human rolled aside, the claws missing him by inches. Sparks flew as they carved the stone floor. He countered with a strike to the Emperor's arm. The steel blade scraped the armor but did not pierce. The crowd shouted in madness, some cheering, others jeering. The daughters leaned forward, unable to look away. The Emperor attacked again, his strength unstoppable. Each strike was heavy enough to crush stone. The human dodged, ducked, rolled, each movement costing him more breath, more blood. His broken sword flashed, striking weak points, looking for cracks. But the Emperor was not like beasts or champions. He was patient. He was endless. At last, one claw slashed across the human's chest, tearing through his armor, blood spraying onto the black stone. The human staggered, his sword slipping in his grip. The crowd roared. The courtiers above shouted with joy. "End him! End the fool!" The fiery-eyed princess gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. "Stand, please, stand!" The human fell to one knee. The Emperor towered over him, raising his claws high. "This is the fate of those who defy me." The Emperor thundered. "Die, human!" The claws came down, but the human moved. In a flash he rolled aside, the claws slamming into the stone where he had knelt. The ground cracked, fire bursting upward. The human rose, his face pale, his chest bleeding, but his eyes blazing. He struck, not at the Emperor's chest, not at his arms, but at his leg, where the armor was weakest. The blade cut deep. The Emperor roared in pain, stumbling back for the first time. The arena shook with gasps. The crowd could not believe what they had seen. A human had wounded the Emperor. The icy-eyed princess whispered, her voice sharp as ice. "He sees what others do not. He fights with mind, not just blade." The Emperor's roar silenced the arena. His eyes burned hotter than ever. "You dare wound me? Then feel the fire of 1,000 worlds." His body glowed with molten light, power bursting from his claws. Flames rose from the ground, swirling into a storm. The human was thrown back, his sword slipping from his hand. The crowd screamed in madness. The Emperor stood in the center of fire, a god of destruction. The daughters cried out at once, their voices breaking. The human, burned and bloodied, crawled across the stone. His hand closed around his sword once more. His breath was ragged, but his eyes did not close. He forced himself to his feet, his broken blade shaking in his hand. He looked at the Emperor, his voice a whisper but clear. I'm not finished." The crowd fell silent. The daughter's eyes widened in shock. Even the Emperor froze for a heartbeat. Then his cruel smile returned. "Then rise, human, and face your end," the firestorm raged. The duel of Emperor and human had only just begun. The arena was fire. Flames twisted around the Emperor, his massive body glowing like molten stone. His eyes blazed brighter than suns, his claws dripping with pure energy. To the crowd, he was no ruler now. He was a god of destruction. And yet, before him stood a human. The human's armor was broken, his chest torn open with wounds. His sword was cracked, the tip gone. Blood dripped from his side, falling onto the black stone floor. Any other being would have collapsed long ago. But he stood, steady, unshaken, his eyes locked on the Emperor. The daughters could not look away. The icy-eyed princess clenched her hands, her calm mask cracking at last. The fiery-eyed princess leaned so far over the railing that guards tried to pull her back. Her voice rang out, breaking through the roar of the crowd. "Stand, human. Do not fall." The Emperor raised his claws. His voice rumbled like thunder across the pit. "You have fought beast champions, fire itself. You have refused my command, but you are only flesh and blood. You are weak, and weakness cannot rule." The human lifted his broken blade. His voice was quiet, but carried across the arena. "Perhaps I am weak, but weakness is not shame. Weakness learns. Weakness adapts. And weakness endures." The Emperor roared in fury and charged. The clash shook the arena. Claws struck steel, sparks flying like stars. The human staggered back, blocking strike after strike, each blow heavy enough to shatter stone. His arms shook with pain, but he did not let go. The Emperor swung again. The human ducked, rolling beneath, striking at the Emperor's side. His sword cut a shallow line through the burning armor. The crowd gasped. The Emperor snarled, spinning, his claw slashing across the human's back. Blood sprayed. The human fell to one knee, gasping, his sword barely in his grip. The icy-eyed princess whispered, "Rise. Please rise." The Emperor towered over the human, claws raised for the killing strike. His voice thundered, "This is the fate of all who defy me. You will die nameless, forgotten." The claws came down, but the human moved. In a sudden burst of strength, he rolled aside. The claws struck the ground, shattering stone. With a cry, the human rose, his broken blade slashing upward. The steel cut across the Emperor's arm. Black fire spilled out. The Emperor roared in pain. The crowd screamed in shock. A human had drawn blood from the Emperor himself. The human stood tall again, his chest heaving, his voice steady. "My name will not be forgotten, because today, I make the impossible real." The Emperor's fury shook the skies. He unleashed his full power. Flames exploding in every direction. The arena became a storm of fire, stone melting beneath their feet. The crowd shielded their eyes. Even the guards retreated. Only the daughters leaned forward, their faces lit by fire, their eyes wide with awe and terror. The Emperor struck again and again, his claws a blur. The human dodged, blocked, rolled, each movement costing him more blood, more breath. But each time he found an opening. A cut at the leg, a strike at the arm, a stab at the chest. Slowly, piece by piece, the Emperor's armor cracked. The human bled. His body shook, but his eyes never wavered. At last, the Emperor raised both claws high, gathering fire between them. The air trembled. The ground split. "This is the end," the Emperor roared. The firestorm fell like a sun crashing down. The human screamed, charging forward through the flames. His broken sword glowed red, nearly melting in his grip. With all his strength, with all his will, he drove it upward. Steel met flesh. The sword pierced the Emperor's chest. The arena went silent. The flames died. The Emperor staggered back, his burning eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in his endless reign, he was wounded beyond recovery. The human fell to one knee, his sword buried deep in the Emperor's chest. His breath was ragged, his body broken. But his voice rose, clear and sharp. "No throne, no crown, lasts forever." The Emperor let out a final roar, shaking the stars themselves. His body collapsed, crashing onto the black stone, shaking the entire arena. Silence. Then, slowly, the crowd began to shout, not in anger, not in joy, but in awe. The daughters rose to their feet, their eyes burning with tears and light. The fiery-eyed princess whispered, He has done it. The icy-eyed princess, calm once more, said only, The emperor has fallen. The human stood over the fallen ruler, his sword broken, his body broken, but his spirit unbroken. A new legend had been born. The arena was silent. The emperor's body lay on the black stone, his crown shattered, his chest pierced by the broken sword. His molten blood seeped into the cracks of the floor, steam rising into the dark sky. For the first time in centuries, the throne of the empire was empty. The crowd of 100,000 aliens sat frozen. Their ruler, the one they had feared for generations, was gone, and the one who stood above his fallen body was not an alien general, not a conqueror from another world, but a human. The human staggered to his feet. His armor was torn, his chest bleeding, his sword nothing more than a broken shard of steel. But he stood tall, his eyes steady, his body unbowed. High above, the daughters had risen to their feet. The icy-eyed princess's calm mask was gone, her lips parted in shock. The fiery-eyed princess leaned forward, her hands gripping the railing, her eyes blazing with fire. The silence broke at last. It began with whispers. He killed him. The emperor has fallen. A human has done this. The whispers grew into shouts, the shouts into a roar. The arena shook with voices, some crying out in rage, others in awe, others in something new, something dangerous. Hope. The daughters descended from their platform, their jeweled robes trailing behind them. The crowd parted as they entered the arena floor, walking side by side toward the human. The icy-eyed princess stopped first. She looked at him, her voice soft but clear. No one in all the stars has ever stood where you stand. You are broken, but you are unbroken. You are the proof that fear is not eternal. The fiery-eyed princess stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. You fought not for power, not for a throne. You fought because you refused to kneel, and that is why you live when all others died. The human looked at them. His face was pale, his body shaking, but his voice was steady. I came here not for crowns, not for power. I came because no alien dared, and I could not turn away. But you... He looked at both sisters, his eyes burning with respect. You are not prizes. You are not treasures. You are more than his chains. If I claim anything today, it is not ownership. It is freedom. The crowd fell silent again, every word cutting into their hearts. The emperor had ruled with chains, with fear, with silence. And here stood a human, bloodied and near death, speaking of freedom. The fiery-eyed princess's lips curved into a fierce smile. The icy-eyed princess lowered her gaze for the first time, hiding the glimmer of tears. Together they stepped forward, placing their hands on the human's shoulders. Not as slaves, not as trophies, but as equals. The arena erupted. Some shouted in fury, unable to accept what they saw. Others shouted in triumph, the first sparks of rebellion igniting in their voices. The courtiers on the high walls argued, some calling for the human's death, others too shaken to speak. The guards hesitated, their loyalty trembling. The human raised his broken sword one last time. His voice cut through the chaos. No alien dared, but a human did. And now the daughters of the emperor walk not behind me, not beneath me, but beside me. This is the new truth. This is the new legend, and no fear will silence it. The daughters stood taller at his side, their eyes burning with the fire of a future unseen. The whispers spread like wildfire through the stands, through the city, through the empire itself. No alien dared, but a human did. The emperor's crown lay shattered on the stone. No one picked it up. No one placed it on their head. For the first time in living memory, the throne was empty, and the people realized it could remain so. The human turned, his steps slow, his body weak, but his spirit unbroken. The daughters followed, their robes trailing like fire and ice. Together they walked out of the arena. Behind them the empire trembled. Ahead of them the stars awaited, and the legend was born. A legend that would travel from world to world, from soldier to child, from slave to king. No alien dared, but a human took the emperor's daughters not as spoils, not as prizes, but as equals, and across the galaxy fear began to fade, replaced by something greater, hope.